Helio Matthias staying there. This exact squad competed for a long time last season in more or less every competition they were part of. But do you remember what happened? Well, thank you for building the mood music right down there, Helio, because my next question to Mark was going to be, with this, I don't know if it's the international break helps a bit, if anything, Mark, now, but are you concerned at all going into April? Or is it a case of, before we get into looking at April in depth, is the general vibe for you that we're so far ahead, it just is what it is, and we roll on?
No, I think, 12 is a great lead with 9 to go. Obviously is. I mean, crazy good, dream stuff. But there definitely is something going on. There definitely is something missing, from our displays. Now, we as a three, we chat a lot about the games out with the podcast, and we have, I'm like you always like to say, I'm the sort of pessimist among us. And I've been sort of moaning since around Christmas about various things in our performance. And, you guys have kind of corrected me here and there, like the Aston Villa one I moaned about when we drew, and maybe the Everton one. And ultimately, you're not going to win every game. So sometimes I am being, too down on it and a little greedy. But I think that kind of debate of, are we not playing well or are we playing well has been in that sort of debate and on a knife edge since around Christmas. And I think we're now just in danger of that not being an opinion anymore, that being kind of a fact that we are not the same side that we were the first half of the season. And that's not to say we're not going to consider this a great season. We're not going to get over the line. I still hope we will and turn it round. I hope this break and the cup final and things is enough to kind of shake them. But my gut feeling is that with all the negative things, particularly the contract and stuff, that knocked out the cups, that there's too much kind of negativity and uncertainty that we're almost spoiling what should be this incredible run-in for us. We should just be buzzing about all of this. We should just be thinking, just another 5 wins and it's guaranteed. Realistically, another 3 or 4 wins and it'll be ours. And we should be really loving that. And I just don't feel that way at the moment. And I know that's, I really do want to give myself a shake and remind myself that, in a year's time, I'm going to want to be right back here, ready for this, going into this, and enjoying it sort of thing. But you can't kind of kid yourself, so I'm just here kind of, the question was, am I worrying? Yeah, I'm worrying. I'm just sitting here worrying. That's all I'm doing, worrying.
James, we can't drug him through the screen, but can you lift him a bit? Are you as worried going into April when you look ahead to that and what he's saying?
No, because there's games there that are going to be winnable, and every single time we win, we're just one less to lift that trophy. And I think it's up to the fans now to actually exactly have a bit of a shake and go into the derby and say, right, let's get after these. We beat them. It's only another 4, and that's a way we have to just kick a game at a time and not worry about looking at the end of April, or just take a day at a time, a game at a time, and just focus on that. And I think what we'll get through, I guess it's just one of those things that maybe Slott's been a bit naive in relation to what takes for a Premier League campaign. He's been extremely lucky with injuries, and now he's starting to see the fatigue. And, in January, when I talked about, exposed, this is where maybe a signing would have been really helpful, because it would have just helped. You can see Gravenberch starting to kind of go down with his interception and kind of just doing the work. And I think he needs a little bit of help because, again, he's just a young lad and he's only playing a massive amount of minutes, and he needs that wee bit of help.
Yeah, I actually think a little bit of it goes back to what you said, Mark. There's always that recency bias. And if we'd had another game, like a 5th game, just like a routine league win, I think it stood out your mind. But because there's not been a game since Newcastle, it just kind of festers a little bit on a negative.
That's exactly
and
it,
then
yeah.
The whole mood music changes and you can't do this, but if you go back a little bit, say it was a positive contract update that had broken, around Salah and VVD.
Exactly, yeah.
The whole music would have been from most of the fan base fucking brilliant. Right, we're storming into the derby and all that. But I think it's
100%.
just felt like, in factual terms, you've exited the European Cup. You've lost the Carabao final. There's this big gap. There's other things that way. Yeah, and then there's just this gap between a game. I actually think, I don't know if you agree, Mark, it's that recency bias just festers a little bit.
It definitely is. It's like you said. Like I actually think football is like it's what it can. That's why I mentioned about the result in Anfield potentially changing the cup final result, because I think things are that delicate. I think it is a case of how you feel, how the momentum is, like where the morale is in it all. And I think that's easily shifted one way or the other. You can get yourself out of a slump with one good result and then it all changes. Or even like you said, a simple contract thing, just one of them, anything. If we found out tomorrow that Virgil had signed his new deal, the entire feel of the club changes overnight. The whole thing feels back on track. We're going to win this title. Virgil's leading us out next season. We go again, all that sort of stuff. Because I think the negativity, certainly coming from me, isn't necessarily about this season. I don't think we're going to mess the title up. I think we're going to win it. I'm sure we are. It's more about like the bigger picture. It's like, are we hollowing the title a little bit by letting the squad fall to pieces in the summer? Letting the best players in their positions just walk for nothing in the summer. It's so hard to detach that possibility from, the special nature of winning a title.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one. It almost feels like we need this Everton game to come around quickly, just to knock us out the malaise. And actually, next week it'll be different as we start to hear the press conferences and all those bits. And I mean, we've got to face into April, Jamesy, because there's a fair few games, not too many more. There's only 5 because it's just the league. You've got Everton at home, Fulham away, West Ham at home, Leicester away, and Spurs at home with those. So it seems a full range. And let's be honest, gents, some of these you would pick, as the remaining fixtures. So I think you've got to look at that. But I want to get into it, starting with you, Jamesy, one by one. Everton, we're going the derby at home. What is that going to be?
I think it's 2-0 to Liverpool.
I would take that all day. Mark?
I'm terrified. I think it's going to be a draw.
I've got 2-1 feeling. I think there's going to be minutes in that. We're going to have to sort of, I don't call it ride the nerves a little bit, or we might just get into it. But I just think maybe with the international break, Anfield under the lights, everyone desperate to get back into it, I just get a feeling that'll be 2-1, which a win with no injuries is just what we're looking for every game. Let's not pretend that at all. It's not necessarily about performance. Fulham away. Interesting one, Jamesy. What you going?
I think it's 1 each. I think it's a draw.
Mark?
I actually think that's the one we'll kind of get back on track in, because away from kind of the Anfield pressure, away from the spotlight of, the Trent stuff lingering around, all these sort of negative things, think you get to go away there and just play your game. And I fancy us to win that one 2-0.
See, I get a draw feeling for that, which actually, in the context of the season and what's left, isn't the worst result in the world in that regard. 4 points from those two isn't a bad start, knowing what we need. Interesting. Jamesy, Sunday the 13th of April, West Ham at home, 2:00 will be
2-0.
Mark?
3-1 us.
Yeah, I get West Ham are in that sort. I think they're 15th, 16th, aren't they? It feels like their season's over. Nothing to really play for. That is one you'd pick, no doubts about it. This one, I think most people would pick this one a week later, Jamesy. Leicester away. I mean, they're horrendous at the moment, aren't they? You've seen their results. What's it going to be?
They've nothing to play for now. They're nearly relegated. So let's go 3-0 Liverpool.
I actually was thinking that they could actually be relegated by this game, practically, as in confirmed, pretty much, bar everything else. Mark?
Yeah, similar for me, 3-0.
Yeah, I actually think that's the nicest game for us against the team that's likely down by then, giving up. They're horrendous at home as well. So, yeah, I'd take that. Spurs, the end of the month, Jamesy.
I think that all depends on how they proceed in Europa. But again, we need to win this. I gather Slot said, look, whatever happens, as long as you win the home games, then we're champions. So I think we have to win this, and I think it'll be 1-0.
Oh, 1-0. I'll go high in scoring, but I'll go to you first, Mark.
Yeah, again, it's going to be a context one, isn't it? So what I've been trying to do when thinking about these is looking at the Arsenal fixture next to it, because you imagine by this stage, by Leicester and Spurs, you're starting to wonder, is it now? Will that be the day? Will this be the day? And so if you just kind of go game for game, they start with Fulham, could easily drop points, especially given like how they're failing to score. They have to go to Everton. Quite funny, really. They have the reverse of ours. We play Everton first, and then we basically switch. But going away to Goodison, I think, is a much more difficult prospect, given how Everton are playing. So I do think they'll drop points at least once in those two. So should we manage to win both of ours, we're staring down the barrel of. So it would go to fifth. We would go up by a further 2, and they would be
14 clear.
And then so it would be, you'd be looking at Leicester or Spurs, depending on if we go. I mean, you could just go and win it at Leicester. It could already be over by the time we face Spurs, and if that is the case, and Spurs still have things to play for, I mean, at least league position, you'd imagine they make some kind of a push for the later European spots. If they get any kind of a run going, they'll certainly have more to play for than we will if it's over. But I still think, I mean, from a personal level, I would love that to be the day for us, so we can be sitting there at home, in the stadium and watch it happen live. The last time we won it, obviously, it was when Chelsea were playing City, and we got to watch the other game. I think having it in our hands, in our game, would just be an amazing way to do it, especially since we'll likely all be there in the ground and, get to experience it firsthand. So, kind of on that basis, or I mean, I guess you could even look at it, if you want it at Leicester, this is the first time, you'll all be there in Anfield as champions together. So kind of either way, I think it'll have this massive sort of atmosphere around it. So I expect we'll win that. I think we'll just be massively buoyed and win it.
It is a tough one. I mean, you look at the league right now, and because everyone's got this, that Arsenal are just going to go on this demolition job till the end of the season, win them all, and we're going to have to pick up X amount of points, etc. Arsenal are tracking, lads, at exactly 2 points a game.
Yeah.
And by the way, before all these apparent injuries, when Saka and everyone was there, it was about 2 points a game they were tracking. They've never been higher than that. So if they get the maximum or keep on that level, so 9 games, 2 points, 18, that means we'll need to get 7 points to win the league if they track their average.
Yeah.
So it is so hard to predict. I'm a bit like you, though, Mark. I just can't get this Spurs game out of my head. And I think that will be one. Maybe it won't be. But if you're right, Jamesy, they're in Europa and they're probably thinking they're already buying that. They're not interested in the league. They don't want to ruin the party. They're just thinking, we'll just play our part and get whooped there. But is it Spurs for you, James? Is that where you're fancying? Mark's sort of splitting between Leicester and Spurs. What are you reckoning for that game?
Again, Arsenal's permutation of Real Madrid depends on how much they're going to put into that and just go for broke. So that's another thing you have to think about. I think it's Spurs. I think Arsenal, they're maybe not going to go into demolition, but they're going to make it harder than it has to be for us. And I think it'll be Spurs.
Red Jabby there agrees with you, saying the title will be won. Spurs at home in front of the Kop. Bucket. Listen, we would take that all day. The earlier, the better I get, but we would take it all day. And I already know, Mark, you've been looking at the permutations like that meme where it's got the red lines going through it and the conspiracy theory. So
yeah, I'm doing it right now.
What will be. Everyone has got their predictions on that. And